Hello, everyone. Welcome to HM&C Art Talks. HM&C Art Talks is online platforms where HM&C artists discuss with scholars their practice, providing new insights into themselves as well as their work. My name is Angelina Medina, and I am an emerging scholar in modern and contemporary Latin American and Latinx art. Today, I'm joined with the Argentine artist, Raquel Rabinovich, whose practice is very much focused on making the invisible visible. Raquel, welcome.
Yes. So you have questions for me, right?
Yes,
You want me to talk about that?
Yes. So in your work since the 1960s, you have been interested in making the invisible visible and in uncovering the unseen. What has inspired this lifelong investigation for you, and why have you found it so compelling over the decades? Will we ever fully be able to understand and miss the darkness?
Yeah, the dark is for me a metaphor. I find it, for instance, in mythology. I can give you an example of that with Greek mythology, where the gods, for instance, Hades, Persephone, and Demeter. Hades inhabited the dark in the underworld. And at one point, he abducted Persephone and took her to the underworld. But her mother, Demeter, was very desperate to find her daughter, until finally she discovered where she was. So she asked Hades to give her daughter back from the underworld. And then he said, it's very important to be in the underworld in the dark, because there you can learn and experience the essence of life you cannot find anyplace else. So let me have her for 6 months, and then the other 6 months you can have her. This way she can learn what she has to learn to be in the world. And that is very inspiring for me, because in my own work, I do that in terms of trying to inhabit that space. And then I realized there are many important processes that I find also in the unconscious mind, from where art emerges. I see it, for instance, in nature. I see it in the egg, could be the animal world or the human world. The gestation in the egg happens in the dark. And also in the natural world, all the roots that we don't see, that give life to trees and plants and everything that is in nature. Or even in architecture, all the foundation of the building we don't see are in the dark. And I can go on and on with many other examples. So I can say that if we can see in the dark, we can see everything, which means seeing meaning understanding.
Right. All the work is in the background that provides the surface and truth.
Right.
And I know that in the 1970s and 1980s, you were assisted by the nonprofit organization Experiments in Art and Technology, EAT, to create large-scale site-specific sculpture installations made of tinted gray and bronze glass. Can you explain further about this collaboration, and why were you and how did you become interested in sculpture?
Yes. I was living in Long Island in the early in the 70s. And I was working on a series of paintings called Dimension 5. I think you're familiar with them, right?
Yes, right behind me too.
Yes, I exhibited them not long ago at the Hessel Museum at Park College. Anyway, working on those paintings, I think I completed them. And then I began dreaming that they became detached from the walls where I painted them. And they walked down to the center of my studio, so they became freestanding and transparent. So I got the message, or the realization, that they wanted to become sculptures. And then I understood that they had to be transparent, which took me to discover that they had to be made of glass. But because I didn't know anything about glass or about sculpture, I remember that organization called Experiments in Art and Technology, or EAT, was founded at the time exactly for artists like me who wanted to experiment and explore what we call non-art materials, non-traditional materials, but we didn't know how to do it. And they did that with an engineer in materials, and he helped me to explore it, to use it, to cut it, to be familiar with everything that has to do with glass. Other examples were, for instance, artists wanted to explore mathematics in their work, so they would match them with a mathematician. Or others wanted to explore literature, so they matched them with writers and poets. So it was a wonderful opening for all of us in terms of how we can proceed in these explorations. So that's how it came about.
Amazing. And especially because so many of those installations are very dreamlike. That is amazing to hear that they originated from the Dimension 5 being in your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping on with this sculptural installation, I would like to hear more about Invisible City, which was created in 2000. It consisted of a series of metal frames whose walls were panels of ethereal floating white gauze. And I know that it served as a sculptural collaboration with Pauline Oliveros's The Lunar Opera, and it was installed outside of Lincoln Center on August 17th, 2000. Can you tell me more about the title Invisible City, derived by Italo Calvino? How did you meet Pauline Oliveros? What inspired it? And how do you see the sculpture underscoring your investigations into the ephemerality of landscape?
Yeah. Well, it consists of a structure made of white metal rods and 7 floating veils made of a gauze fabric that were hanging from the structure. They function like curtains. The wind would make them float in endless and unpredictable configurations. It was installed outdoors in Lincoln Center. And the inspiration for me came from Italo Calvino's book, Invisible Cities. Because in that book, every city is an imaginary one. And for me, it was also to create an imaginary city. For Pauline Oliveros, the concept she had when she said lunar opera is what happened in the moon. So when she invited me to collaborate with her in the celebration there, then I thought I would make an invisible city in the moon. She was invited by Lincoln Center to celebrate 50 years of her making music. She was an extraordinary human being, both as a composer, a performer, and a human being. And I met her through friends we have in common. So once And everything happened just on one day. I think it was August 17th, the year 2000. For my installation, I have to rehearse how to install it and deinstall it, because everything has to be done in just one day. So I have to sort of rehearse the installation and make sure it could be done. And it could be done. So when you enter the installation, you cannot see anything at the other end. But as you walk through it, you go through the different, sort of the 7 veils. And every time you go, you traverse them until you reach the end with the 7th veil. There you have the city emerging into view. So you go from nothing to everything. This is a concept which I work with in other sculptural installations, like for instance, in the glass environments. Again, the same. You could see from everything to nothing and nothing to everything. And the same happens with the sculptures made of stone by the banks of the Hudson River. With the rising and falling of the tides in a different configuration, is the same concept. Because when the tide is high, you don't see anything. When the tide is low, you see everything. But everything is very gradual. It doesn't happen suddenly. It's a process, it's a slow process of emergence and then submergence. And I think that's basically what happened in that fantastic day. It was the ultimate of ephemeral art, just for one day.
Definitely. And it has that sort of natural connection of, taking time to
Yes,
gradual too.
slow time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you moved to Manhattan in 1979 and you started meeting other artists, you were a part of the group American Abstract Artists, also known as the AAA, and you participated in various group exhibitions at the Museum of Contemporary Hispanic Art, or MOCHA. Can you tell me more about this time in your life, in the artistic circles that you were participating in? What were you and the other artists interested in?
Yeah. During the 80s, I lived in loft in Tribeca. And I was I'm so sorry, let me turn this off. Okay. It was a very exciting time in my life. It was like an inner journey and an outer journey. Because to be exposed to the wonderful art world of the time, so many extraordinary movement, exhibitions, and artists, a time of creating art, contemplating art, connecting to what happening in the museums and the galleries, what happened to other artists. Saying that, I have to admit it was very competitive, extremely competitive. Like if someone else would be like your enemy, you wouldn't reveal what was on with your art, where you will exhibit, who will be the writers writing about them and the critics. It was like a secret institution where you could not access unless you were part of the inner circle. But being a member of the AAA, where the meetings took in my loft, it was exactly the opposite. It was very cooperative. We shared everything we thought and we did. In those meetings, many times our critic would join us, and we have conversations, dialogues. It was inspirational and very supportive. We had group exhibitions together. we have seminars, we have opportunities that otherwise we wouldn't have individually. So that meant a lot to many of us inside the art world. And I don't know how to say that, but the opportunity to be part of something, not being excluded, it was essential. Though art is universal, in many ways we needed like community. Sometimes it could be because, I don't know, your art is abstraction, which is what happened to the AAA. Other opportunity could be if you're part of, I don't know, women or Latin American, Jewish, though I don't believe in this kind of segregation. It was obvious that willingly or not, we were part of that. Being old or being young, all of this. White or black or brown.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially needed when art making can be so secluded.
Yes.
And then our last question for today, as we know, your investigation in making the invisible visible continues to today and is apparent in your current solo exhibition, Avatars, at Hutchison Modern and Contemporary. I understand that you incorporate a plethora of color under the seemingly dark surfaces. Can you describe your artistic process in creating this specific series?
Yes. You know, I work on many pieces at the same time, so they become a series. Even you can see my studio in the back. I'm working on a new series, and I see you can see I work on 5 at a time. Maybe the complete series could be 10. But it's important for me to work them. I go from one to the other. And I have the blank canvas, which in many ways could be scary, what's going to happen there. Like a writer confronted the blank page. And then I became aware that if I go with primary colors directly from the tube with a brush and apply them on the blank canvas and go from one to the other like a dance with a brush, it's marked the beginning of the process. Because after that, there are like infinite amount of layers, different grays and blacks and monochromes, never entirely covering what is under. So there is a constant step of emerging through the layers. It's a very slow and long process of concealing and revealing all the time. So that the artwork becomes what it is. And in the particular instance that you mentioned in Avatars, it's the same process. It may take between 1 and 2 years to complete. But in a certain way, there is a constant state of the emergence of meaning. Like meaning is not fixed. There is no finality to that. So that the work is in a constant state of becoming. And that's how I give visibility to what we can call the invisible. Like a footnote, also, it's the same process I use in my drawings or everything I do.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today. And thank you everyone for watching.
You're very welcome, Angelina. A pleasure talking with you. Thank you.